Alrighty, when a guy works retail like me, I enjoy the days off. And my days off, I like to talk to people who are in the sports industry, like James Duthie from TSN, and man of many hats. I was doing a quick recap of your career, and I was much familiar with it and whatever else. But yeah, really awesome that you come on, and I never see you with the hat on TV, but it's good.
Yeah, it's more, you can tell, take it. It's more just like straight out of bed. We took the dog for a walk. It's not, this is like unmaintained hair right now. This is
Yeah,
before my extensive hair and makeup team gets involved in it, you know what I mean? And by
yeah,
that I mean my hair team is me. And
right.
team is one girl that throws a bunch of powder on me, but I thought I'd save your audience from that.
Well, I usually, yeah, you probably get into the studio pretty, late in the day, but when you work in a Shell Trade Center, you're probably in the makeup room at 5 a.m.
Yeah, sadly, that's the case. And I am not morning. Like I've worked my entire career working, evenings
Yeah.
basically, with the odd exception. So mornings are very rough for me. Like the odd time you get a World Juniors, it's like overseas, and you do a pregame show at 5 a.m. or something. That will not be my finest work, pretty much guaranteed.
For sure. Definitely. Yeah, let's kind of maybe start with how'd you gonna get your start in the career and that sort of thing, and
Yeah.
I'll let you tell the story. I mean, 'cause that's why you're on.
Well, I think if you look at a lot of, forget the analysts, because most analysts are ex-professional athletes, but
Mm,
you look at most sportscasters, anchors, and hosts, they're probably all failed athletes to a certain extent, right?
right.
We all wanted to be, for me, I wanted to play in the NFL, and realized at a certain point that I was a 5'10", 145-pound defensive back with mediocre speed. So that probably wasn't going to cut it with the Niners. Um, so I think along the way, like the end of high school, I remember going into, this is a long time ago, my guidance counselor, and saying, what can I do to do something in sports? What can I take at university? And she's her old time Commodore 64 or whatever computer she punched into was like, I remember there was sports administration at Laurentian University and sports marketing somewhere else, and journalism at Carleton was one of the ones that came out. And so I said I was from an Ottawa boy, so I said I'll go take journalism and try to become a sportscaster. And I got sidetracked. I did news for a bunch of years and covered murders and fires and everything else, but eventually I was able to get that chance to do sports and kind of never look back.
Yeah, what was kind of your first event that you covered on TSN? I have a vague recollection, but what was that first event?
I don't think you're going to guess it. You tell me what your guess is right now.
You were covering a Toronto Blue Jays game?
No,
Oh, okay.
wrong, wrong. Although that was probably pretty early. Um, so the first event I ever covered. So I was working in Vancouver, and when I got hired by TSN, and before I moved back to Toronto to take the job, they had me host the RBC Cup, which is, I think, the Bantam or the Midget National Championship. It
Hmm.
was in Nanaimo that year. And I'll tell you a story. So I was very nervous. I remember going to the store and buying a suit and tie, because I didn't really wear suit and ties reporting for whatever reason at our station in Vancouver. And we had to tape an opening. They wanted to tape the opening because I was the new guy and they were nervous, and I kept butchering it like over and over again, like 12 times. And I could hear the producer in my ear. We'd started maybe a half an hour before showtime trying to tape this opening. And I could hear the nervousness in his voice getting louder and louder, like, oh my God, who is this guy they put me on to? Because he didn't know me from Adam.
Right.
And he's like, we're never going to get through the show with this idiot. And my heartbeat was going up, and I could see the cameraman looking around the camera like, oh my God, this guy's terrible. And it wasn't necessarily that I couldn't, it was just the way that TSN did things. Okay. And you're going to go talk on over this graphic board, and then you're going to do this. And I was just very confused by what they were doing and telling me. So we finally had to do it live, I think, and I did okay and got through the game and survived. And I remember the producer telling me at the end of that show, man, I was terrified that we were never ever going to get through this show with you, and you were going to be the greatest disaster in the history of TSN. So that was my first thing. But the first thing that people would probably remember, I hosted CFL and NBA. That was what TSN hired me for, my first job. So I would do sports desk as it was on that time on the weekends, and I would do a couple of NBA games and CFL games during the week.
Nice.
Yeah.
Who were some of your mentors, role models that have played a key role in your life? At the book signing there, the guy beside me, as we were chatting, and you guys used to work together in Ottawa, so it's kind of it's a couple minute conversation there, but it was kind of neat.
Yeah, it was. Well, I would say the two guys in Ottawa, Brian Smith and Bill Patterson, were the local sportscasters for any of your listeners that don't probably wouldn't remember because they both passed away sadly.
Hmm.
But when I was growing up in Ottawa, TSN wasn't around, Sportsnet wasn't around. There would be national stuff on CTV and CBC, but for the most part, everybody watched your local sportscast, right? That's where you got your news at 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock. And so Brian Smith and Bill Patterson were the two guys that I watched every night. My dad had the TV on, like he was a diehard sports fan. And so those are the two guys I grew up on. And that was the extent of my ambition. I said to myself, man, if I could ever work with Brian Smith and Bill Patterson and do the local sports in Ottawa, my career would be made. I never thought about covering Super Bowls and Masters and Stanley Cup finals and things like that. I just wanted to cover the Ottawa Rough Riders and the Ottawa 67s. And so those guys were kind of my mentors. When I started at CJOH, CTV Ottawa, uh, I was a news reporter, but I would always hang out back with those guys whenever I could. And they were so funny. Like they just would tell me hilarious stories about the business. And it was actually, I don't know if you remember this, but mid 90s, Brian was shot in the head by a schizophrenic who came to our station. It's just a horrible story. I think he thought in his warped mind that the media was trying to send messages through his brain or something, and so he decided to come to our station and shoot the first person that he saw. And Brian finished his sportscast at 10 to 7 and came out, and that was the first guy he recognized. And I was on vacation in Halifax, still a young news reporter, and they called me and said, "We need you to come back and do the sportscast the next day because Billy was a mess." And Brian at that point was still in the coma and passed away shortly after I got back. And it'll still be always the hardest thing that I ever do in this business because I walked into the newsroom and Brian had just passed away and everyone was sobbing, and I had to sit down and try and do a sportscast. And
Hmm.
yeah, hardest thing I'll probably ever do because I love the guy and he was a dear friend, and that was kind of how I got my break in the business. So I worked with Billy for the next couple of years, and I never felt right because you always want to have your dream job, but you want to get it the right way, and getting it because Brian was killed was the worst possible way to ever get it. And so I decided I needed to leave and go somewhere else, even though I loved the job, just because it didn't feel right to get the opportunity that way. So I ended up going out to Vancouver and taking a job, and um, yeah, ended up getting hired by TSN. Anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying that Brian and Billy were the two guys I really admired most. I'm sure there's guys in the States, the Bob Costases and such who I really admired. I would also say a big influence on me was David Letterman.
Hmm.
I watched when I was young. David Letterman was still had like a morning show on NBC that nobody remembers, and then had his Late Late Show on NBC before he got the big CBS gig. And I was definitely influenced by him, just in the sense of I think he was at the forefront of bringing dumb humor to the world, and so I probably was influenced a lot by watching him doing stupid human tricks and stupid pet tricks and all the things he did, dropping watermelons off of buildings. And some of the dumb stuff that I've done at TSN over the years, I can probably throw back to growing up watching David Letterman.
But yes, and he had the Canadian connection, right? Dick Asman out of Regina, right?
Yeah,
Like that was a huge
yeah.
thing. It's
Dick
like, oh,
Assman,
right,
yeah,
yeah.
Paul
So
Schaefer, all that.
right? So yeah, those sorts of things, and you know, yeah, it's kind of crazy that way. And what you said at the book signing too, like, we watched the Bombers and the Jets or the Leafs, and Um, and that, like it's life or death, but you came from news and transitioned to sports, and at the end of the day, it's just a game,
Yeah, it is. And
right?
that's what I mean, that's sort of the way I'm sure there's people that watch some of the stuff we've done, some of the skits we've done and say, God, these guys are so stupid, like grow up. But I've always treated sports as an escape. And I think that's partly because of my background in news and covering horrible events, which you end up doing as a news reporter. And so when I got to one of the reasons I wanted to do sports is I didn't like the negativity of being a news reporter. But uh, I just sports should be an escape, right? As much as we can love it and live and die with the Bombers or the Jets or whoever it is, you have to um, you have to treat it as an escape from your normal day-to-day stresses. And so that's the way I kind of treat it. You treat it with when you're covering a game, you treat it with respect and seriousness because fans desperately care. But we also have to remove ourselves at the end of the day and say, man, this is just a hockey game.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I still may be reliving the bottom of the ninth of the Jays, but
Yeah, yeah. I'm the same way. Like I
yeah.
trust me, despite me saying this, I will. I think I have gotten better at it. Like I don't cheer. The Jays is a great example because I went to game 6 and 7 and
Mm,
uh, I don't get to go to games as a fan much. I'm not sure if I was telling you that in Winnipeg, but uh, almost I couldn't remember the last time I was at a big game as a fan.
hmm
And because I'm so fortunate to cover so many. And so I got so wrapped up in those Jays games, drinking beer and high fiving everybody around me and screaming at the top of my lungs. And it was a really special couple of nights just to soak that up again and be completely vested as a fan. So yeah, I did. It took me a couple of weeks too to get to get over that one.
Yeah, it's yeah, and my wife, she was showing the video of the celebration to her coworkers, and I said, well, I guess 1,500 people have seen it, so whatever, like just
Yeah, 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 exactly.
but yeah, that's good, right? Because you are in, and I think Arash Madani was at Game 7 as well. So, and he was describing the defensive replacement there uh, for the center fielder that came
Yeah,
in and made that catch. I mean,
yeah,
just
bosses or whatever.
just wild. So,
Yeah, it was a crazy, crazy moment. From
yeah.
my perspective, I was on the third baseline, like 5 rows up. And when Ernie first hit that, I was like, okay, it just looks like a fly ball, but it was
Yeah.
kind of carrying, carrying. And your eyes go from the ball when you're in the stands, go from the ball to the outfielder. And he was flailing a little bit, right?
Yeah.
The left fielder. And
hmm
so I was like, oh my God, it's over. Like he
hmm
could see he was unless he made like this Willie Mays over the shoulder catch.
Right.
And then the other guy comes out of nowhere and just,
Yeesh.
yeah, insane,
Just
insane.
wild. Yep. But if you would have told me they'd be in Game 7 of the World
Yeah,
Series
exactly,
after a 74 win season the year before, I'd take it.
exactly.
I see you're wearing the Masters hat. There was only so many questions
Humble brag, sorry.
people get to ask at the book signing. So, but 2003, Mike Weir, uh,
Yeah,
covering that, and I hear golf is like your favorite thing. You alluded to it, but my
yeah.
boss wanted me to ask you about the golf as well.
Well, I did not get all full disclosure. I didn't do the Mike Weir one. So that's when I was still like
Okay.
we had just gotten the hockey rights in 2002. And so I that's when I became sort of the hockey host. So I did do the 2002 Masters. I think because my gig at that time, I didn't have any playoff series or something, so I was able to go. But 2003, we had a bunch of playoff series, so I didn't go. So I was actually doing a playoff game that day, and we were all watching the Masters while we were watching the game, and then driving home, listening on the radio. And I got home in time to watch, the last couple of holes in the playoff. But that is one of my, forever one of my where were you moments. The ones I've gotten to cover, when Tiger won in 18 or 19, I'm terrible on the years right now. I said to myself, this will be the greatest Masters I'll ever see, right? Because just the storyline around that. But then when Rory won last year, I was thinking to myself, this might have beat it. because I mean, maybe it wasn't as profound as Tiger's win because of what Tiger meant to golf. But if you consider just the pure movie script storylines involved and the drama of the day, like I think Rory's was even more movie like than Tiger's was. So it's a one of my favorite events every single year to cover. It's just spectacular.
Yeah, because it goes to the playoff round, and then he hits that shot. It's like so close to the hole. It's like, okay, I
Yeah.
guess it's game over now, right?
Right.
I remember my mom texted me, "Are you watching Jets game?" No, I'm watching golf. Like this was,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
this is it.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite something, right? And
It is, and it's a very cool place to go to for any of your listeners that ever get a chance because it's kind of like a surreal, different world. You're not allowed to bring cell phones in there, and the old, wooden scoreboards, and it just feels kind of like you've been transported back in time to like the 1930s or something. It's really cool. Like I always say, and I may have told you this, but where else in the world are there 30,000 people together and nobody has a phone in
yeah,
2025? Nowhere,
no,
right?
no.
And so it's very cool just watching people talk, and they keep the beer and sandwich prices, to old school, like $1.50 or $2. So it's a really neat place to be.
Does Arthur Blank own the place?
He does not.
I heard it's good prices at the Falcons
Yeah.
Stadium. So, any chance to meet? Have you had a chance to meet Fred Couples, Jim Nance?
Yeah. I've only met Jim Nance once. Really nice man. I should have listed him on the other sort of inspiration things because I would watch him doing football and golf when I was young
Hmm.
and thinking, man, this guy's so smooth. And he really is. And he has an ability to the ability to talk for 4 hours and not make a mistake is something else. So I'm a massive fan of his.
Yeah,
Uh, I've Freddie Couples I've met. I've been lucky enough to meet almost everybody in golf because I've covered the Masters for so long now, and I cover the Canadian Open. So good guys, golfers generally really good guys. I haven't met too many. I'm not a big Patrick Reed guy, but I haven't made too many jerks on the golf course over the years.
that's good. Um, Covering the Grey Cup in Winnipeg. What's kind of been your favorite Grey Cups to cover? I mean, awesome coverage, you guys, and again, showing kind of the makeup room and that sort of thing. And what's kind of your favorite moments of doing a Grey Cup?
Well, first, I love the Grey Cup. I've said this many times before that I like it better than Super Bowl week, and a lot of people, especially the non-CFL people, shake their heads and how is that possible? But to me, the Super Bowl, as much as I love it, is a very corporate during the week, and it's almost too big.
Right.
Whereas the Grey Cup is just like the perfect Canadian celebration, right? And so the actual week, I love Grey Cup. My favorites, when I was talking earlier about not being, this job sucks the fan out of you to a great extent. So, yeah, I cheered for the Blue Jays, I cheer for the 49ers, but the sports I cover, I don't cheer for an NHL team. I cheer for all, like I cheer for the Jets to do well, I cheer for the Leafs to do well, I cheer for the Sen because it's just better for us when there's many Canadian teams in it as possible. But I will say the year that the Red Blacks won the Grey Cup in Toronto, when Henry Burris was a quarterback, I grew up in Ottawa, going to every game with my dad and my mom.
Hmm.
And so I was, a diehard Ottawa football fan back then, but my dad was the biggest of them all. Like if you knew anybody that knew my dad, all he ever talked about was the Rough Riders or the Renegades or the Red Blacks. He would have always put the logo on the side of his car, which was like embarrassing to me when I was young, but you'd have this big Rough Riders logo on the side of the station wagon. And so he was diagnosed with cancer the year before that. And so I knew he didn't have much time.
Hmm.
And so covering that game, and it was kind of out of the blue. Remember, the Red Blacks were only in their second, third year, I guess.
Yeah.
And for them to win against Bo Levi Mitchell and the Stamps, who were heavily favored, that was a very cool moment. And I remember I had a few minutes before I went up on stage and did the Grey Cup presentation and called my dad. And just one of those moments you'll never forget, right? Because he was at the other end of the line. He didn't come to the game because he was sick, but just how the joy in his voice that, after years of suffering and franchises folding, that he would get a Grey Cup in Ottawa was a pretty cool thing.
Yeah.
So that'll probably always be my favorite Grey Cup.
That's awesome. Yeah, that was a very tremendous game. I mean, overtime, they were
Yeah.
8-9 in the
Probably one
fifth.
of the top two, three Grey Cups ever, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most definitely, probably up there with 94 with BC,
Mhm.
Baltimore,
Yeah, absolutely.
that sort of thing. So, good, good. So you were on Spit and Chicklets yesterday.
Yeah.
So that was awesome. So I come into work yesterday and I'm like, guys, you'll never guess this. James Duffy's going to be on Spit and Chicklets, and he's coming on Late Night with Smitty today. And they're like, "Oh wow!"
Hey,
So yeah,
well, the two
I
biggest
appreciate it.
two biggest pods in North America, right? I got to go on
Thank you. I appreciate it.
them.
Yeah, it's becoming that way. Maybe after 5 years.
No, when I do a book like this,
Hmm.
I'm happy to, you work on a book for a year. And so I feel a bit sheepish because I feel like I'm out there plugging nonstop, which kind of annoys. Yeah, I hate that. I hate the feeling of being annoying and always posting things about the book. But it's kind of part of the business that if you write a book, you got to try and sell the book. So I'm super happy to come on anybody's. I love the book. I think it's great. I think people will love it. So I'm happy to come on and talk about it with anybody.
Yeah, I mean, to get those stories, it is quite something, right?
Yeah,
Whether, with the breaking of the sticks, and you're
yeah,
you're very authentic in there, and I love that. There's
yeah,
no BS, as they say. And I was watching Overdrive. You gave all the guys a copy, so
yeah.
yeah,
No, you had to stand in line and pay for yours. Sorry, I could give it through you technically through the phone.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the other thing it's tough though is like you're talking about chicklets, and I don't know if you listened yesterday, but there's a few stories that stick out that everybody wants to hear about, and so I find like you end up telling the same stories. And I
Mhm.
don't like giving away the entire book, but you end up telling the same stories in the same podcast. So I'll try. If you want me to tell you stories, I can try and tell you some like different ones that I haven't told on 18
Sure.
different
Yeah.
podcasts
Yeah.
already.
We can, yeah, just pick one in there and.
Well, first of all, the book for people who don't know, the concept of the book. I wrote a book called Beauties like 5 years ago, where the idea was, I probably told you this in Winnipeg, is that I read a lot of hockey books that are biographies, and you read a 300-page book and you get like two or three really good stories, and the rest of it is, I grew up in a small town in northern Manitoba and all that stuff. And I said, why couldn't you write a book that's just great stories and nothing else?
Right.
So I'll go to hockey players, coaches, whatever, and say, just tell me one awesome story. Like if you were out with your best buddies at a bar and they said Sid or Wayne or Brady or whoever it is, tell me your favorite story. I want to hear that story and I want to put that in the book. So it's a collection of, I don't know, there's like 50 chapters, but I think there's like 100 different stories in there. Oh God, which one should I tell you? I'll tell you an old school one that's kind of
Okay.
funny. I don't hold on a second. My dog is being a pain.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Mike Gardner told me a funny story that kind of took me back. Mike Gardner's, of course, Hall of Famer, and they were back in the days when NHLers didn't take charter flights when they were on normal flights with the rest of us. He was playing for I think the Capitals, and they were flying back from a road trip and they stopped at Boston, I guess Logan Airport in Boston. And one of the guys on the team, you can buy at Logan Airport, you can buy lobsters, right? So you buy a live lobster. You can do it in Nova Scotia as well, and you can they put it in a box for you, and you stick it under your seat, and you take it home and have a great dinner. And so one of the guys on his team, kid's name was Kid Curry. That Glenn Curry was his name, but they nicknamed him Kid Curry. And so he decided to buy a lobster. He said, "Get home and have a great dinner." Well, Kid Curry was the guy who always fell asleep first on the plane. So of course he gets on, tucks his lobster under his seat, and falls asleep. And you fall asleep. If you're the first guy to fall asleep on the plane, then you're the guy they're going to prank no matter what. So I think it was Dennis Maruk played on the team. As soon as Kid Curry falls asleep, they take the lobster out. Now, another thing, back for your younger listeners, sounds crazy in 2025, but there used to be smoking sections on planes. So rows, 15 to 20 would be the smoking section, as if there was some invisible barrier between row 14 and row 21. So, airplanes in the 1980s and 70s and such were just full of smoke from the
Mhm.
five people in the smoking section. So I guess Dennis Maruk, NHL players used to smoke too, was in the smoking section or whatever. So he lights a cigarette, and I guess the rubber bands they have around the claws of the lobsters. He sticks the cigarette between the rubber bands of the lobster and lets it loose, walking down the middle aisle of the plane. So you got this live lobster with a cigarette in its mouth crawling down the middle of the plane. And the whole plane was in hysterics. The flight attendant was not happy whatsoever. But so she takes the cigarette, they get the lot, and Kid Curry slept through the whole thing. So he wakes up to this commotion, goes, "What's going on?" He says, "Your lobster had a smoke, but everything's fine." So that's one of the shorter stories in the book. But the book is a combination of funny stories like that. Just some crazy stuff that went on. One of my Roberto Luongo's always been one of my favorites. He ends up in all my books. A good friend of mine, and we did a game in I think 2015 where he I don't know if you remember this game, and that's why I wanted to tell the story because it kind of got lost in history. But they're playing the Leafs in Florida, and Luongo gets hurt and gets taken to the hospital. They think there's a broken bone in his shoulder. Al Montoya is the backup, so Al Montoya goes in, and Montoya hurts his groin, basically ripped it off the bone. Horrible injury. But so Luongo's at the hospital. Montoya's trying to stay in the game. No emergency goalies back in the day.
Mhm.
And I think this was one of the moments that actually brought in the e-bug emergency goalies. So the Panthers don't know what to do. So Derek McKenzie and Scotty Upshall, two of the forwards, run to the dressing room to put on goalie gear. Meanwhile, Rob Tallis is up. He's the goalie coach up in the box, and he's like, "I better get down there." They're calling Gary Bettman to find out what they're allowed to do. The players were so Derek McKenzie's got his almost full goalie gear on. And then they found out the players actually aren't allowed to play. So, if you've ever thought an NHL forward is not allowed to
Yeah.
play, to go in and play goalie, so that'll never happen. So they get permission from Gary Bettman to let their goalie coach, 40-year-old Rob Tallis, who hasn't played a game in 10 years, to come into the game. Meanwhile, Luongo is at the hospital and getting an MRI on his shoulder. He has a small break in his shoulder. So he finally gets out of the MRI and he puts on his phone, goes to Twitter, and all of a sudden he sees all these tweets like Montoya hurts, Derek McKenzie coming into the game. No, wait, Rob Tallis is coming to the game. And Luongo's like, what the hell? So he's like, I got to get back to the rink. So whoever drove him there, they get back in the car, they whip back to the rink, and Luongo runs out, and they said he's got a broken shoulder. But they're like, you got to get in. So they fire him up with Toradol, and Luongo goes back in the game and like makes like 19 straight saves. So that's one of the craziest. And we were doing the game at TSN. And so we
Mhm.
were unaware of all this stuff. We didn't know Luongo was in the hospital or
Right.
anything like that.
Yeah.
So I think probably the only time in NHL history that a goalie went to the hospital, came back and played in the same game. So there's a bunch of stories like that that fill the book.
Yeah, and I love that, right? It's more than just the game. There's always stories behind the mentors, the relationships, all the quirky stuff that
Yeah,
that
I
happens,
think
right?
what my goal was to kind of take people behind the curtains, right?
Yeah.
Like we hockey players don't offer up a lot in interviews usually, but if you can get them away from that and get them to tell stories, they usually have really good stories. And to me, hockey is, I write this in the book, is just a sport that create stories maybe as much or better than any other sport, just because of the brutal nature of the game and how much time these guys have to kill on the roads and sits. It's a breeder of great stories.
Yeah, and I experienced that with Brad Lukowich when I had him on. He was telling me stories about John Tortorella in 2004 and that sort of thing, and the coach that he was. And then you've got to experience him as TSN,
Yeah. Did
uh,
he? Who? So Lukowich had him in Tampa, right?
in Tampa. Yeah, the 2004 season.
I wonder. Did he tell you the story about the bus and the guys in the gear? Do you know?
I'll have to go back.
It's in. I'll tell it really quick. I think
Yeah.
it's in my first Beauties book because Torts is a good buddy of mine. He's crazy, but good buddy. So they play, I think, in they either play the Rangers or the Devils, and obviously you stay in New York at the same hotel between games, and they lose like 5-0. So the next day they're supposed to meet at MSG, get dressed at MSG, and then they're going to bus over to the practice rink, which is at Chelsea Piers, and practice for an hour or whatever. And I can't remember. Usually, maybe they get dressed over there, but Torts orders them to get dressed at the rink, and so they get dressed in full gear, and then they get on the bus. But they don't end up going to Chelsea Pier. They just keep driving around New York, like around Manhattan for like 3 hours, and all the players are going like, what's going on? They're in full like Tampa Bay Lightning gear, and it was Brad Richards, I think, and Marty St. Louis who told me this story, and they're driving going, what's going on, right? And finally, they just drive back to like the Garden or whatever, and the bus door opens, and they're like, what's going on? And Torts gets up and says, last night you wasted my time for 3 hours, so today I decided to waste your time for 3 hours, and that was it.
Oh, that's good. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've been to New York. I can only imagine.
yeah,
It was enough to take the subway to Yankee Stadium.
that's Torts.
Quickly before we kind of wrap up here, as I feel like I'm Brian Williams, always looking at time, but
It's all good. Of
um, and as I always tell everybody, you're always welcome to come on a second time.
course, of course.
Um, Favorite Super Bowl to cover? I mentioned Super Bowl 36, but was there, I know that was your first, but is there another one in there that kind of catches your eye?
Yeah, I'm terrible with the numbers, as you know. You're very good with them. Um, but I would say, geez, probably the 28-3 game, just because it was so shocking. When we're watching the game together, I think that year was Jesse Palmer, maybe Luke Wilson, maybe Jabari Greer, I think were my panel members. Or I can't remember if Schultz, he was still around then, the late Chris Schultz. But uh, when it was 28-3, you start talking about what you're going to say at the end of the game. And we had all of our panels figured out, right? End of the Patriots dynasty, what a performance by the Falcons, Matty Ryan, MVP,
Right.
so on and so forth. And then they kind of, when you're covering the Super Bowl, you have to go down early. They escort you down into some pen, basically, that you have to stand in for the last few minutes of the game before they let you on the field. And so there's just one little TV up in the corner that you got 100 media people around watching. And so there's probably whatever 7 minutes left. Maybe it was 28-10 at the time. And to watch it fall apart for the Falcons. And if you look at that, if you watch that game again, kind of like that Jays World Series, there are probably 10 moments. Almost every play has to go the Patriots' way for the last like 10 minutes of that game for them to win. Like if you had one play that went the Falcons' way, like in retrospect, there was Julio Jones made a long catch down the sidelines.
Yeah,
Can't remember what the score was at the time. I think that is 2-score lead.
yeah,
And, Matty Ryan could have taken a knee 3 straight times and kicked a field goal, which, you would never do. There was whatever, 4 or 5 minutes left in the game, but that would have killed enough clock or killed the Patriots timeouts or whatever that they would have been almost impossible. But instead, like things went horribly wrong. I think he ended up getting sacked and fumbled or whatever it was. And that game still amazes me because you think about 28-3 and the amount of time left, it's just impossible to come back. And like literally every single thing that had to happen for the Patriots happened to win. And that was the moment. But, Brady still had to make it happen. So I didn't love covering all those Super Bowls for the Patriots because you kind of get bored of doing the same team all the time and Belichick news conferences. But that one was pretty spectacular.
Yeah, most definitely, right? The overtime win and
Yeah,
Blunt, Blunt was one of those running backs there. He's pumping up Brady after they win, and
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's
it's
crazy.
I mean the Edelman catch. That's the play. I mean,
Yeah, it is.
somewhat David Tyreek-ish, but like
Yeah,
really
probably
good.
even yeah, as probably as good, probably.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, most definitely.
yeah.
Where does James Duffy see himself in 5 years from now? As I always tell people, you don't have to tell me everything, but it looks
I'm
actually
past the
looking.
stage of
Mhm.
somewhere radically different. If I'm sitting right here talking to you about Beauties 3 and still covering the Super Bowl and the Grey Cup and the World Juniors and the Masters, I'll be happy as a pig, and you know what? Because I love what I do. I'm super blessed to do what I do. Um, and so yeah, like I said near the beginning of the interview, I never thought I'd be doing any of these things when I started out in this business. It wasn't even I wasn't a wild dreamer, with big ambitions. So to be able to get to do all the things I do is such a treat. And so yeah, I'm more than happy to keep on doing what I'm doing as long as they let me do it.
Absolutely. And to bring it back to Ottawa, World Juniors 2009, Jordan Everly, the five
Yeah,
point.
that was pretty damn good too.
Yeah, you're in the building there, and
I'll give you I don't think I've told anybody this, but the next book I'm working on, they some of the stuff we've been talking about, they wanted me to do a book of just my memories of the greatest sporting events I've been at.
Mhm.
So I'm sure there'll be a chapter on that. There'll be a chapter on the Super Bowl we talked about, the 2010 Olympics and the Crosby goal, Tigers Masters, Rory's Masters, probably that Red Blacks Grey Cup. Um, so that is going to be a fun one for me to write, simply because uh, to get to relive all those moments over again will be pretty neat.
Well, yeah, and it's etched in my mind, and I think in a lot of Canadians' minds after they won the gold medal in 2010. And you said, "There's Corey Perry with a big Canadian flag at center ice." Like that was like it's forever etched, James. And again, a kind of
Oh,
photographic memory, but
yeah,
I
you
mean,
do have one of those memories though, because I didn't even remember that. So there you go.
okay. Well, it's funny. The next day I came into work and I told the guy I told my boss at work. I said I asked James this question about Super Bowl 36, and he said, "Oh, that was impressive." He just had a good laugh. But we've been working together for 10 years, so I just correlate everything.
Yeah, like I said, Rod Smith
Hmm.
is he's the greatest. His mind works like you. So you could say 93, AFC championship game, and he'd come up with the teams and the results and what happened. And, numerically, like I've never been able to, like, my mind doesn't work with like Super Bowl 39, Super Bowl 40. You tell me about the two teams who were playing and
Right.
whatever stadium it was, and I can tell you
Yeah.
everything that happened in the game. But I don't, my brain doesn't work with numbers that way. And so, or years necessarily. So I struggle with that. Somebody has to clue me in and say, remember the Brady versus Eagles, Nick Foles game? And they'll go, oh, okay, I'll tell you all about it. But the numbers mean nothing to me.
Yeah, Super, yeah, 41, 43.
Yeah, there
I
you
was
go.
I was in Mexico watching that one, so
There you go.
yeah, good, good. Right on. Well, this has been awesome. Thanks again, James, for coming on.
Oh,
It really is
oh,
a
thank you for coming out to the book thing. And like I
Mhm.
said, happy to talk stories. I love talking about sports with you anytime. And thanks for talking about the book a little bit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Good deal. Hey, all the best and
Thanks, brother.
God bless. Yeah, for
Good
sure.
talking to you, man.
Good talking to you too.
Okay, take care.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.